Good morning, Bulldogs. It's day 3, which is the third day of day 1, if that makes sense, of our emergency closing. So here's a quick little video on what you'll need to do today. If you already had class the past 2 days, you can watch it as a reminder or to see on this day in history. We'll figure that out as we get used to this new routine. So today, what you want to make sure you do, well, first you want to make sure you check attendance. So you'll see in Canvas that'll have the date and where you can mark yourself present. And I want to try to keep things as normal as possible. So I want to tell you a little bit about on this day in history. And something we were doing all month was focusing on Women's History Month. And last night I was like, you know what? This coronavirus is not going to let us ruin Women's History Month. If I need to be the person to help keep it forward, I mean, there's many of us doing that, but here we go. So I want to tell you about a woman who was born on this day in 1881. Her name was Edith Nourse Rogers, and she was of New England background, grew up in Maine and then Massachusetts, a pretty well-to-do family. We had a private tutor till she was 14, then went to boarding school and had finishing school in France. But she was a social welfare volunteer and also a politician. Most notably, she was a U.S. Congresswoman. Her husband was a man who went to Harvard Law and became a congressman. And then once he died, there was an emergency election where she actually was urged to run because of the work they noted she did as a volunteer. And she beat the former governor of Massachusetts, Eugene Foss, by 72% of the people voted for her, which is astounding. You really never hear votes like that. So as soon as she was elected to Congress, she said, I hope that everyone will soon forget that I am a woman, right? There was a big fuss about that. She was the first woman elected to Congress from Massachusetts. She was the second woman, no, I'm sorry. There were 2 women in Congress already that were in her situation, that their late husbands were in Congress, and then they had special elections, and their widows were voted in. That still happens today. Dingle, her husband, was in office, and then she earned his spot. But she was the 6th woman overall to Congress. So she had a lot of issues that she had tremendous progress in. Some didn't get support. One of those were her work with Jewish refugees. She spoke out when many other politicians were not speaking out about Hitler, speaking against Hitler and his treatment of the Jewish population. She sponsored a bill that to take in 20,000 Jewish refugees under the age of 14 to protect them from Hitler's concentration camps and awful things like that. Unfortunately, it was never passed. A lot of other people in Congress said, no, we have to worry about charity at home first. So many of those children she probably would have saved ultimately perished. And this is something that we should be aware of, that there were women like her in the government trying to save them. She also did a lot of work for helping women in the military. She actually was a volunteer during World War I. And in 1941, she sponsored the WACs, or having the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. Mostly clerical work, but it would free up men in the military to do more combat and physical roles. She got a lot of opposition for that. A lot of people still thought, even this was not women in infantry, this was not women driving tanks or flying planes yet. But a lot of people were like, no, women have no space in the military. They were afraid it would be bad for their morality, for all sorts of things. But she pressed on, and after Pearl Harbor, people were like, oh, maybe this is a good idea. So then it was passed. And in 1942, she helped sponsor the WACs would actually fall under the U.S. Army Reserve. That, of course, had some pushback, but eventually that was approved as well. She also did work for the GI Bill. You've probably heard of the GI Bill. that provides veterans with educational training, VOTEC training, low interest loans for homes and to start farms and businesses after they return from war or leave the military. She was one of the sponsors of that. And June of 1944, President FDR actually did sign that into war. She also was still around when it came to Vietnam, and she was one of the politicians who opposed U.S. interfering in Vietnam. She was the second longest woman to serve in Congress. I think it was just surpassed in 2012. I have to check that, but yeah, she was in Congress for a very long time. So someone I wanted to bring our attention to today. All right. So check. Next thing you want to do, shade your maps if you haven't already. It looks like this is going to Biden, this election, but nothing is in the bank yet. In fact, Sanders was asked yesterday by a reporter if he's going to drop out, and he said, like, I'm dealing with a global pandemic here. He actually had some curse words thrown in there. In other words, like, let's worry about this first. So the map you want to fill in is that over the weekend, Biden won Arizona, Illinois, and what was the third one? Oh, Florida. So the delegate counts are on my previous video, but it's like Biden has 1,000 something and Sanders has 800 and something. We could double check on that. So once you've done that, you want to watch a video that is here on YouTube. I will post it on Canvas again. If you have any trouble, just always check the YouTube channel. It's on the guillotine. I promised you guys we'd have a day where we learned about all the messed up stuff about the guillotine, and I didn't want the coronavirus to deprive us of that. It's, of course, not as much fun as doing it in class, but I still try to share some of the information with you. Now, after you watch that video, there is an assignment on Canvas. It's a Google Doc. I'm assured you guys know how to respond to Google Docs on Canvas. I will be around a couple points throughout this morning to make sure that's going smoothly. If you have any questions, there's 4 questions. You only have to answer 3 of them. You choose. But what you want to make sure is that you are giving full detailed answers. You're not just giving like brief answers. They should be about 2 to 3 sentences each, maybe even more if you feel necessary. It should incorporate things in the text, in the excerpt, which is from Beccaria. Remember him above, and also incorporate information that you learned from the video to show me you watched it and you're synthesizing information, you're making connections, which is something I've always been proud of you guys been able to do. All right, once you do that, a second reminder, please take attendance. I'm saying it again. It's a really super important thing. All right, I miss you guys. I miss seeing hello as you come in the door every afternoon and checking out how everyone's doing. Stay tuned, because I am going to try to think of other ways for we to be connected that still stays simple. I don't want to make this complicated for us, but I'm just trying to think of some ideas in my head, and I'm also open to suggestions from you guys. So maybe tomorrow or sometime soon, I'm going to put out a Google form where you guys can give me some feedback and let me know how you're doing. All right, I hope all is well. Stay safe, stay healthy, and let's get some learning done. All right.